Hi, folks. Thanks so much for joining. We're just going to give it a minute or two to let some other people join, and we'll get started shortly. For those that have joined, why don't you tell us in the comments where you are calling in from? I'm seeing Morocco, Curacao, Italy. I am currently in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Another Italian on the call. Thanks so much. Give it another two. Ooh, Brazil, London. Wow, cheers from London. We'll give it another 2 minutes or so and then we'll get going. Think we can do it. Everyone from the world.
think you're back.
Yeah, I got kicked off for a second. Sorry about that. But again, I'm Allison from IGLTA, pronouns are she, her. And thanks for joining. I'll kick it over to TJ to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is TJ Chernick. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Director of Partner Engagement for the IGLTA Foundation, the philanthropic arm of IGLTA. Excited to be here.
And I just dropped a link in the chat for the comment section. This is going to be an interactive webinar where we'll be incorporating some live polls throughout the presentation. So to participate, just take a moment. You can click the link either on your phone or open it on your computer. No need to sign in or anything, and it'll let you vote throughout the presentation. So with that, let's get started. I'll turn it over again to TJ to kick us off with an overview of the IGLTA Foundation.
Super excited to be here. The IGLTA Foundation, as I mentioned, is the philanthropic arm of IGLTA, the International LGBTQ plus Travel Association, the leader in making sure that there are inclusive and welcoming opportunities for LGBTQ plus people to travel. And it is so much more than that. I always like to remind people that whenever you conjure up images of LGBTQ plus travel, often you kind of see things often from advertising of pretty people in pretty places doing pretty sometimes expensive things, but travel is a lot more than that. Travel is also the non-binary person who lives in Seattle who has to travel to Florida for work, but doesn't necessarily feel safe doing that. It is the trans individual who has to travel and go through TSA and has to go through sometimes the horrors of that. It is also the travel agency who is asked to book a retreat that they are suspecting might be a conversion therapy retreat. And who do they go for this? And that is where the IGLTA Foundation steps in. We help elevate the mission of IGLTA through three primary pillars of leadership, research, and education. We through our Transgender Advisory Council, our fellowship programs, our scholarships, so many different ways in which we are trying to make an impact in LGBTQ plus travel and tourism and move the needle inside of the travel, tourism, and hospitality industries. And today we're going to hit on the head one of the most important ones, which is research. So that's a little bit about the IGLTA Foundation, but I'll give it to Allison to take us for a broader view.
Sure. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of more information about IGLTA. We've recently refined our mission and vision statements to better reflect the ever-changing needs of the travel industry and queer travelers around the world. So our vision provides a roadmap for the future. We believe in opening hearts and minds through the wonder of travel, and our mission outlines our purpose. So next slide, you can see our mission. Thanks, Amin. We exist to enable authentic travel that enriches lives and connects the LGBT community and industry. As TJ mentioned earlier, research is a core pillar of the foundation's work. It's one of the most effective ways that we fulfill our mission of empowering authentic travel and fostering connections. And we believe that by understanding the needs and aspirations of queer travelers, we can develop targeted programs and resources that really do make a difference. TJ is going to talk a little bit more about some of the research that the foundation has done, including some of the ongoing projects.
Yeah, so as you can see from our list here, from shaping the future of tourism in Europe to our think tank paper about LGBTQ plus tourism in the Caribbean, our partnership with Airbnb, in which we produced a travel trends in Latin America through Airbnb, and just generally analyzing what the LGBTQ plus market looks like within the industry. And the goal here is to help make the difference and encourage the broader industry to make strategic decisions. We'll go into more of this, but the one we're going to talk about today is one we've been the most excited about, which is our Florida state policy impact on LGBTQ plus tourism. Probably one of the most contentious states and topics to discuss, which is why we thought it would be great to come here today and break it down.
Yeah, so as TJ said, we're all here to learn more about this awesome survey that the foundation did. which provides valuable insights that extend beyond Florida. So this can be used with destinations all around the globe who are grappling with similar challenges due to the rising anti-LGBTQ plus policies that we're seeing pop up. So this webinar will explore the findings of the survey, and we hope that you'll use them as a springboard to initiate discussions and strategies for your businesses and CVBs to create more welcoming environments for all travelers. So today we're going to be presenting data on the LGBTQ plus travel patterns and state perceptions, and we'll also be analyzing future travel intentions.
It's me. So, if we often, a lot of people come to us and they want data, and it is one of the most important things people ask about. But often, if we get the data and we give it away, what do we do with it? So that's what we're excited to talk about, as Allison mentioned, some really tangible steps of what destinations, companies, and more can do in situations like this happening in Florida. How this project came to be, I think it's important to talk about some of the data science of it all, our methodologies. So we had 2,300 members of Community Marketing Insights, or CMI. It was a external panel, so it wasn't just our internal members asking, talking into the void, into the echo chamber. We reached far and wide, and from North America and international, so 835 individuals from around the world, with a strong representation from Canada, which was 46% of the responses. And the goal of the research is to understand what LGBTQ plus travelers are feeling and how they're responding to the situation in Florida, as Allison mentioned, as a sample set to what is going on in other states, like Texas, for example, which I'm from, so I can say that.
And excitingly, we have our first poll. So this poll we're asked, I think next slide, you can see the live of it. So if you log on or scan this QR code here,
I might have to cover.
And question
This might be
is
the case of best
LGBTQ.
laid plans. I think Allison might be. Allison, I think you're back. Best laid plans. This is life in the fast lane, Allison.
Truly. Oh wow, okay. So
Awesome. Okay. This is awesome. Yeah, I can encourage everyone to continue to vote in. It is awesome to see these numbers
and
come through.
while we wait for some of the um,
I think Allison's probably struggling with a little connectivity. That's what happens whenever you try to do live webinars, which is totally fine. I can.
Oh, great. Switch to my hotspot. Sorry, we've been getting some bad weather down in Florida, so I think I'm gonna blame it on the weather.
Totally.
But how's our poll doing? What do we got here?
Good. It looks like we got 25% saying very welcoming or somewhat unwelcoming. Interesting split.
So I think if everyone's voted, we can probably
Yeah.
show you guys what our survey found, which you can see it's a little different than what the responses were, but I think it kind of shows. So our responses you can see from the non-US, so those are countries of the UK, Canada, Brazil, Mexico, and Germany were kind of our highest respondents. So they came back with 47% saying that they see Florida as somewhat unwelcoming or very unwelcoming, whereas US respondents overwhelmingly view the state as unwelcoming or very unwelcoming. And the survey results, obviously, they show a significant perception of Florida, negative perception of Florida. And while the survey focuses on Florida, unfortunately, these findings are not unique to the state. We're seeing similar trends in other destinations with rising anti-LGBTQ plus policies. Places like TJ mentioned, Texas, Tennessee, even some European countries. And it's really a shame to see. So TJ, with this information, what are some things that businesses and CVBs can do to create more welcoming environments despite these anti-LGBTQ plus policies that are coming from legislatures and governments around the world?
It's an interesting thing to talk about this during Pride Month in particular, but because it echoes so far beyond, it's awesome to see companies step up during Pride, but Pride never ends, technically. And I think it's really important for companies to realize they can be in destinations, can be at the forefront of moving the needle, and they can do that through, if they're able, through supporting anti-discrimination policy, supporting anti-discrimination policies, both internally and externally where they can. Protecting their own employees is hugely important because you are only as welcoming externally as you are internally, so you have to look both inward and outwardly. Policy moves on to the grander scheme once you've supported those policies, looking outwardly and how you're marketing inclusively, but also genuinely. As I mentioned, you can conjure up beautiful images of LGBTQ plus travel, but when the stories being told through marketing aren't genuine, communities see it. It can be quite apparent. Also, it's important, and this isn't just advantageous, but the partnerships that you develop with organizations like the IGLTA or IGLTA Foundation are hugely important, as stepping up and saying, this is who we support and this is why we do it. And I think it's important for destination companies to really understand, it is both the right thing to do and good for the bottom line. And discrimination has a negative economic impact, and inclusion provides economic value. It has been shown time and time again, statistically, and I think that's hugely important. It can be both the right thing to do and good for the bottom line.
Yep, 100% agree. So thanks for sharing. So we have a second poll for you guys. How likely are you to visit Florida in the next 12 months? So next slide, again, you can either scan, or if you still have that page open, it should just auto refresh and go ahead and vote. And I do think since we're streaming, there's a little bit of a delay on the vote. So just give it, 10 seconds to start seeing the results after you voted. Don't panic. It does count. TJ, while they're voting, why don't we talk a little bit about the potential economic impact of this negative perception and how this negative perception might affect tourism in the long term in these states?
I think it's hugely important. I think having, I'm from Texas. I moved here from New York City. And I think, and I say this with caution, I get a lot of feedback of how could you live in Florida? How could you support that state? How could you do this? And I think statements like that come with a vast amount of privilege that, it must be reminded that, we are here and we are queer and we've always been here in the state of Florida. And to say just get up and leave is very privileged. And I think it's very important to realize, there are thriving communities that, especially in Florida, rely very much on travel and tourism for their economy. And when we turn our backs on communities that are well known, like Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Orlando, we're doing a disservice to local communities. In communities like Fort Lauderdale, it can be often seasonal, and during high season, companies prepare for the lower season. And when people don't come visit, it negatively impacts the low season. And when businesses when businesses are overlooked, businesses start to fail, and then things like community centers stop getting funding from local businesses, there is a very tender economic ecosphere to support in travel and tourism, and I think that's really important to remember.
Yes, definitely. Let's take a look at our poll here. Oh, thanks. The screen's a little small for my eyes, but let's see. It says very likely to visit, not very likely to visit being the top two choices. So, looks like more people are likely, which is good. Glad to hear that. It's not deterring your travel. Unfortunately, it is deterring travel on a larger scale. So if we go to the next slide, we can see some of the results from our survey and what we found. So as you can see, it's pretty consistent with what our last question which was more about perception of the states. So we are seeing a correlation between the perception and the intentions of future visits and why that is troublesome. TJ, I don't know if you have anything to share on the impact.
Yeah, no, I think this is I think some things that I think we're seeing from the survey versus the polls that we're doing. I think it cannot be understated how in tune often our community is with what is going on. And I think as much as we are seeing this, and we're seeing kind of the discrepancy of how US respondents are a little more hesitant to come and support the state versus non-US respondents who maybe aren't as in tune with what's going on legislatively in the US, which I think is an important perception. But I also think, as a community, we often know where the safe places are. So on the grand scale, while a lot of people won't support a place, people who know where the Fire Islands, P-Towns, Wilton Manors, Saugatucks, Puerto Vallartas of the world are, they still will go to those spaces because those spaces have done a valiant effort to be known as inclusive.
Sorry, I couldn't get myself off mute. And just to go off of that, one thing that I found interesting in this survey was that the transgender and gender diverse travelers responded that it appeared that they're even less likely to visit Florida compared to other LGBTQ plus demographics, specifically cis gay men. So I thought that was interesting, and it just kind of highlights the need to further research and to invest in research and targeted outreach for these groups to make sure that they're feeling welcomed and safe in these areas. That just because they're catering to one demographic of, our community, we should be making sure that we're catering to all. So I think this one, do we have a poll for this one, or is this one in the comments? Can you remind me? I think oh, we do have a poll. Yay.
Great.
Okay. Love when that happens. So go ahead and vote. Let's see. Please indicate which statement resonates with you the most. So you can see on your screen, I can't really read that out loud, so I'm hoping you guys can see those choices.
Shout out to Amin Gabouche in the background, who's doing the background work for the webinar.
So it looks like we've got a mixed bag here. It's changing. TJ, do you want to talk through some of these? Looks like tied right now. It keeps changing. Let's wait a second. Give it a minute to mellow out. Thanks for voting, everybody. Voting's important.
Yes. That is absolutely, say it again for the back of the room.
Make sure you're voting.
Yes.
So it looks like right now tied are for statements that resonates. Our anti-LGBTQ plus laws and policies make me less likely to visit a state. And it's important to travel to these states to support their local LGBTQ plus communities and businesses. Both are true. TJ, do you want to talk more about, I know you kind of touched on it, but why it's so important that we do continue to visit these cities and communities and supporting them and the businesses that are in them?
Yeah, no, I think it goes back to destination boycotts, which it's kind of awesome to see here that there are no one is voting for the destination boycott. Hopefully it's maybe influenced by what I was saying earlier, how important it is to, remember these safe spaces and how important it is to come and support them. This is where, these places are this way because people a long time ago were making really strong efforts to make it an inclusive place and go the extra mile to make it a publicly inclusive place. Like as far back as the 70s and 80s in Miami, which is well known for being an incredibly queer-friendly location, and Fire Island, which was well known as a bastion and a safe space for queer people, and primarily for gay men, which I think is also important, to call our own privilege. And we cannot speak for everyone, and there are different intersections within the LGBT community have different concerns and are at a lot more risk. So some of these comments come from a place of privilege, which I am the first to respect. I also think it's interesting how much these like Fort Lauderdale has changed, because it was a place, because it is well known for a place that is very inclusive. The population has grown wildly. The queer neighborhood has grown wildly, and I think that's because it's well known to be a safe space.
And TJ, we have our first question from the chat, and I think it's in regards to just general trends of people going to these destinations versus not. Do you see this trend changing over the next year or two? And this is from James.
Thanks, James. Absolutely. I think we were able to kind of like overlook the importance of queer safe spaces, from cities to bars to community centers, all of them, and kind of overlook them and just kind of, things are getting better. And we've learned in the past couple of years that maybe they are not. And the importance of queer spaces, I think it's coming to the surface. So I think I see our spaces becoming even more important. I see them, I see the need for them becoming more important. So I can see, hopefully we see more queer spaces and more safe spaces opening up. The organization Centerlink, which is an organization that represents LGBTQ plus centers around the country, has seen a large number of new community centers opening up around the country because they are desperately needed. So yes, I can see that is how I see it. I see the queer spaces becoming more important, especially with the election.
Oh, is there an election coming? I think that with that, this is an opportunity where like small businesses, CVBs, DMOs really can get involved because there's this need. So like it's a perfect opportunity to partner with these like smaller businesses and these centers that are popping up, and to not only, get your name out there, but be a part of the turning tide and be on the right side.
And if I can jump into about the election again, I think it's important to understand the value of your local elections and how important they are, because those are the things that hamper or support small businesses from being able to open and for those safe spaces to actually come into fruition. So that is the wild importance of local elections.
Yeah, in our survey, actually, we asked respondents if they want to see businesses, getting involved and taking a stance on certain things, especially at the local level. So that was something that came out of the survey, was if you can, you're not just talking the talk, but you're walking the walk. You're actively advocating for inclusive policies in your local cities and towns. And if you're behind that, your business will follow. So I think next slide, we're ready to kind of go through, I think we have a couple of data points for you on the next couple slides, just highlighting these 3 different prompts that we asked. So the impact of recent anti-LGBTQ plus legislation on travel plans. You can see in the US, it has a major impact. The global, I mean, it's consistent at that 47%. So again, they're not as involved in like the US political climate, but they're still aware. And I think that speaks volumes.
I agree. And I think it should be said like it is okay. Like it should affect you that anti-LGBT legislation is happening and that you are concerned about traveling to a place. If you're not, then you're not in tune. So I think it is absolutely valid. I think this number is a great representation of what's happening right now. And I just, and go back to saying, being from Texas, I don't want to travel to Texas, but I will every year because I'm from there. But every year when I go to Amarillo, Texas, which I'm very proud to be from, I always go back to the one singular gay bar for hundreds of miles that exists, 212 Club. If you're ever passing through I-40, 212 Club, the only gay bar. I go there every year because it is important it's important to pay homage to the safe spaces because in places like Amarillo, there's not a lot, but there's still Austin and Dallas and San Antonio and Houston. So, yeah.
Okay, next one, which I think a lot of people are interested in. I at least thought that this was interesting, the impact that these laws are having on meeting travel, and the work that we do. We go to big events every year, and it brings in a lot of revenue for these cities, and like everything from small bars that people want to go to restaurants and bookstores, everything in between. When you bring a lot of people to a certain area, that's tourism. That's what we do. So this is really important, that it is having an effect on where people are planning their meetings. So 52% of global or US respondents indicated hesitancy or outright refusal to book meetings in these spaces in these cities due to these policies. TJ, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No.
Okay. And then impact of travel advisories. So this was done, I think, at the end of last year, really, the survey collection. So before the US State Department, they recently last month released a global travel advisory for Pride events around the world. So this was before that, to be mindful of. But still, you are seeing that it's having an impact. I think a lot of these advisories, sometimes people see them and they just go, oh, okay, it's just another one. This is just life as a queer person. We've seen this before, but it is still trending upward. So I think next slide talks a little bit more about just the US, the one that I mentioned earlier. While this is, like I said, it's unlike anything that we've seen before. The US State Department put out a travel advisory for all Pride events around the world and basically just saying, be careful. But it's nothing new to our community, but it does show a heightened level of concern from, a state institution, which I think is a pretty big deal. And just further underscores the importance of queer traveler safety and the need for allies and support from people that aren't necessarily a part of the community. And then these are just some best practices to keep in mind while you're traveling. So I think we're ready for our final poll. In this one, we're going to ask you to drop some things in the comments. How would you respond to Florida's recent anti-LGBTQ legislation? So we'll give you guys a minute to talk. And I will scroll through my notes to see if I missed anything.
Well, I will say, since we were talking about safety, there are like safety protocols and reminders for friends, like as you go to Pride festivals or you go to music festivals or anything of, always being aware of where your exits are, having a gathering, like a gathering spot for your friends in case anybody gets lost, in case there's anything that happens to phones or anything like that. It's not to scare anyone, but, take those safety protocols in mind when you're having fun, so you can always be safe.
So Amin from IGLTA that I would still travel to Florida and support the local LGBTQ plus community. And I think that is the correct response, given our data. But it's still important to just be mindful of what is going on and always, educate. That's where education comes in, another pillar of the foundation, to make sure that you're really doing your research and educating yourself, and the risk of travel. Again, not just to Florida, but this is just all around the world. Just know before you go. And that's why IGLTA has so many travel guides and blog posts from our members that highlight queer spaces, queer hotels, queer tour operators, that sort of thing, just to kind of help you cut through the noise. People are supporting Amines, so I think that's 3 endorsements for Florida. Go to Florida and support the local communities there. Last chance. Otherwise, we're going to go to the next slide, I think. All right, let's hit it. Next slide, please. Resilience. TJ is going to talk about he's mentioned it a little bit, but I think we're going to dive into a little more of the stats here.
Yeah, so 67% of the US respondents and 64 of non-US respondents would consider visiting welcoming cities. That is, when we're looking at the numbers, one of the most correlating numbers. And I think this is where the rubber meets the road of the difference between state legislation versus local communities and cities, and how important it is for destinations to really step up and be inclusive in every way that is possible, work with IGLTA, create marketing strategies internally and externally, and policies internally and externally. Because people know the difference, and people can separate the difference between state policy versus a local community. And I think that is so important, and we can do so much to support these local communities. We're very lucky to live in one of the best ones down here in Fort Lauderdale and Miami, which is awesome. But this goes for any city or destination that knows that it is a safe space. Highlighting the community resilience, and I think that's wildly important.
Well,
I won't belabor the other points.
I think this stat just further, shows that our community wants to support these cities that have welcomed us for so long. They want to show up and show out, but they want to do it safely. So if you can put out, in your messaging, in your targeting, showing that it is safe. So anything, even from representation, like the lack of representation of trans travelers is like a huge, I would say, like, falling point. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's something that people aren't doing that they need to, like, travelers want to see more of. And it's little things like that. TJ, do you have something here?
Yeah, no, I would just love, since you're talking about it, I would love to highlight the Transgender Advisory Group, which is a consortium of trans and non-binary professionals in the travel and tourism industry who help support IGLTA make more strategic decisions around representation of the community, but also help us address issues externally in travel and tourism. So I would love to remind, if you are a trans or gender diverse traveler, you can come to us for resources, for connections, for anything like that. If you are a trans-owned travel business, our Emerging Destinations and Communities program can actually subsidize your membership to IGLTA. So the foundation has a lot of resources, and I would encourage anyone who has questions to reach out to us.
Fantastic. So just 2 key strategies that we want you to take away from this webinar, but also the report that we put out for the survey. I kind of already mentioned this. I feel very passionate about it. Supporting the transgender and gender diverse communities, not just through inclusive policies, but also, like I said, your messaging and marketing really go a long way. Things like training your staff on how to talk to this group of people, but also not treating them like they're any different, just making sure you have the correct terminology and you're not using overly gendered language. Little things like that really do go a long way.
And talking about the next strategy, looking, I mentioned this very early on, but highlighting authentic LGBTQ plus experiences and supporting the community through authentic storytelling, I think is really important. You can attract visitors by tapping into the community and getting the stories of local residents. I've seen amazing examples of this through our partners, the IGLTA partners that visit Kissimmee, Orlando, Tampa Bay, St. Pete, obviously Fort Lauderdale and Miami, but locations that they tap in and by marketing, they're actually just telling the stories of local residents. So authentic storytelling is probably the strongest thing you could possibly do. And hiring LGBTQ-owned businesses and suppliers to make those marketing ads, I also think is very important. You can also support the business community by using a source to make those ads for you. It's even more genuine that way.
I think we're ready for the next slide.
All right, I think this is me. Well, as we're getting close to the end, talking about inclusive communities, Japan is known as a relatively conservative country, an incredible one at that. But there are some incredible open communities within the country, especially Osaka, who is actually hosting the 2024 IGLTA convention this year. It is our first in Asia. And we are incredibly excited to be welcomed by them and to bring our incredible delegation from all over the world to Osaka. So if any of our representatives from Visit Osaka are here, thank you. We're incredibly excited. And then if you are interested in getting more involved in the IGLTA Foundation, one great way to do that is to support us. And you can do that with the annual IGLTA Pride Auction, which actually launched today. We have incredible prizes that for destinations all over the world. It is very cool. All proceeds from this auction will go to the IGLTA Foundation. It helps us support our mission, our research, leadership, and education initiatives throughout the year. That is how we make this work happen. So I encourage you to check out that auction and bid today, because you can support us and get a really cool vacation. So, oh, thanks, Amin. So you can scan that there. And with that, if you're interested in learning more, take a look at our website. Take a look at the free resources, the research, the IGLTA travel resources. If you have a dream of going to India, but you don't think it's safe, we have great partnerships in India. We actually have a symposium there every year hosted by the Lalit hotel group. And there you can visit anywhere if you do it safely. And we have great resources for you to do that. So please come visit us.
And then if there are any further outline questions that you have, or you want to get more into the nitty-gritty of the stats of the survey that we just talked about, feel free to shoot an email to TJ. I'm not sure what the foundation email is actually.
Foundation@iglta.org.
Nice. Thank you. Foundation@iglta.org. And we are happy to send you, the full report along with a nice one-pager to help you summarize what's going on. But thanks everyone so much for joining. It's such an important topic, so appreciate your participation in today's webinar. You'll probably be seeing us soon, I'm sure, and we're looking forward to seeing some of y'all in Osaka.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Allison.
Thanks, TJ. Bye, guys.